A judge fined a man in her own courtroom just for the way he looked at her, and when she found out who he really was, she wished she never opened her mouth. This is not a movie. This is the kind of thing that actually happens when someone with a little bit of power decides to use it on the wrong person. Today, you are going to see exactly how it played out, from the moment that Judge picked her target to the moment everything collapsed right in front of her. There was a courtroom in a mid-sized American city. Busy day, cases lined up one after another. Judge Patricia Hale had been running her courtroom for 11 years. And in those 11 years, she had developed one very specific habit when she liked control. Not just legal control, personal control. The kind where everyone in that room knew she was the most important person standing there. She was known for being sharp, fast, no patience for delays, no patience for attitude, and absolutely no patience for anyone who she felt was not showing her the right level of respect. Other judges called it discipline. The attorneys who practiced in her court called it something else when they were outside. On this particular morning, a man named Marcus walked in. He was calm, dressed in a clean dark suit. He sat in the gallery and waited for his case to be called. He was not loud. He did not fidget. He just sat there with his hands folded and waited. That calmness, that stillness, somehow bothered Judge Hale more than noise would have. When Marcus was called forward, he stood up slowly, walked to the front, and faced her. He did not smile. He did not look down. He met her eyes directly and waited for her to speak. And something about that. A black man in her courtroom who did not look nervous, who did not shrink, who simply stood there like he belonged, made something shift in her. She started talking. She asked him questions about the case. A minor civil dispute. Nothing serious. He answered calmly. Short answers. Clear answers. No extra words. And every time he answered without the eagerness she expected, she got a little more tense. Then she said it. You need to adjust your tone when you speak to me. Marcus paused. He looked at her and said, I don't believe my tone has been disrespectful, Your Honor. That was it. That was the moment she decided to make an example of him. She leaned forward and told him his attitude was unacceptable, that he was showing contempt for the court, that she would not allow someone to stand in front of her and speak to her like that. The whole room went quiet. The other attorneys, the clerk, the bailiff, everyone froze because they all knew Marcus had not done anything wrong. His voice had been flat and polite the entire time, but nobody said a word. She fined him. $500. Right there on the spot. Contempt of court. Marcus did not raise his voice. He did not argue. He looked at her for a moment and then simply said, Noted. And he sat down. People in that room later said that his calmness in that moment was more powerful than any outburst could have been, because he was not scared. And she could see that. And that made it worse for her, not for him. After the session ended, one of the junior clerks quietly pulled the case file to log the fine. That is when it started to unravel, because the file had a professional history section, standard paperwork. And when the clerk looked at it, she stopped. She read it again. Then she walked down the hall and knocked on the door of the senior court administrator. Marcus was not just some man who had walked in off the street. He was a retired federal judge, 22 years on the federal bench. He had presided over cases that went to the Supreme Court. He had trained attorneys that were now sitting on appeals courts across the country. He had more legal experience in his little finger than Judge Hale had accumulated in her entire career. He had come in that day representing himself in a small, personal matter, something involving a property line dispute with a neighbor. He had not introduced himself as a judge. He had no obligation to. He was a private citizen that day, and he had simply stood there quietly and let her talk. Word traveled fast. It always does in courthouses. By the afternoon, 3 senior administrators knew. By the next morning, it was in the local legal journal. Within 48 hours, it had been picked up by 2 regional news stations. The headline was simple and brutal. Judge fines retired federal judge for contempt for having a calm tone. The backlash was immediate. Legal organizations started asking questions. Former colleagues of Marcus came forward to speak about his reputation, a man who had spent decades being one of the most measured, disciplined, fair voices in any room he entered. The contrast was not subtle. Here was a judge who had kept her emotions in check through thousands of cases, hundreds of difficult defendants, years of high-pressure trials, and he had been fined for his tone by someone who had never come close to his level. Attorneys who had practiced in Judge Hale's courtroom for years started talking. Stories came out. She had done this before, not to someone as prominent, but the pattern was there. The targeting of people who did not perform. Nervousness in front of her the way she expected. The fines that appeared out of nowhere. The contempt rulings that other judges privately shook their heads at. A formal complaint was filed with the State Judicial Conduct Board within the week. Now here is the part that people always miss when they talk about this story. Marcus never made a public statement attacking her. He gave one short interview, where a reporter asked him how he felt about what happened, and he said, "I was not angry. I was concerned. Not for myself. I've been in courtrooms for most of my adult life, and I know how to handle myself. I was concerned for the people who come into that courtroom without my background, the ones who do not know their rights, the ones who look like me and have no one in their corner. What happens to them?" That quote spread everywhere because he was not making it about himself. He was making it about every person who had ever stood in that room and been made to feel small. The Judicial Conduct Board completed their review in about 4 months. Judge Hale was formally reprimanded. She was required to complete a bias training program. The fine against Marcus was vacated, thrown out completely. And for a period of time, her cases were subject to review by a supervising judge. She kept her position. That part frustrated a lot of people. But the reprimand is permanent. It follows her record. Every future appointment, every evaluation, every time someone looks up her history, it is there. Marcus returned to his quiet life. He still consults for law schools sometimes. He mentors young attorneys. And whenever someone brings up the story, he apparently has the same response. He shrugs and says the system worked, eventually. Not fast enough, but it worked. The real lesson here is not about one bad judge. It is about what calm looks like in the face of power. Marcus did not argue. He did not perform. He did not shrink. He just stood there and let the situation reveal itself. And it did. Some people walk into a room and try to take control through volume, through aggression, through the weight of their title. And some people walk in and simply occupy the space with so much quiet confidence that all the noise around them ends up doing the damage on its own. He did not need to fight her. She fought herself. Watch the next video on screen. It's another story you won't be able to stop thinking about.